start recording this. How are you guys feeling? Carrie is there too. Dan and Taryn, are you guys ready? We can start maybe in 1 more minute.
Yeah, sounds good.
Ready to go. Hi from Denver, everyone.
Yeah. People from Denver. Where are you located, Dan?
I'm coming in from the Salt Lake City office.
Okay, Salt Lake City in Utah. Nice. Great. Okay, we have how many people? 16 people. Yeah, let's wait 1 more minute and we're going to run this. Now, obviously, we're gonna go first over announcements. And I see Bob. Hi, Bob. Bob, can you hear us? There is Bob. Nice. Hey, Mary. Nice. Just let us know, please, where you guys are joining from, as I mentioned. And let me see, where is my agenda of the day? Here it is. Okay, guys. So let's start with this. Let me stop sharing my screen. And here it is. So first of all, welcome 1 more time to another episode of Agile Austin DevOps SIG. We're extremely happy to have people from different parts of the world that are joining us today. This is now the advantage of having a virtual setup, right? So let's take advantage of that. Let's learn as much as we can in this format. So just to start with the usual agenda that we have, let's first ask who is hiring today? Are there any companies, teams that are hiring new talent, and what kind of talent are you guys looking for? Please feel free to speak up, or if you prefer, to drop a few lines on the chat window so that everyone knows if your teams are looking for new talent, please. And also feel free to do it during the presentation as well. Okay. Taryn, did you tell me, are you guys also looking for hiring people or not yet? No?
Dan, I'll let you do
Yeah,
it.
actually, I didn't want to step on anybody else's toes since I'll be taking a bunch of time anyway, but yeah, we are hiring for some roles around evangelism and documentation. Basically, if you're an engineer and you like to write, we have a ton of work to do around content creation and technical content creation. And a lot of it's pretty fun. I mean, you need to like build a plugin or like build cool examples. So like a lot of the first integrations that we do are done by people in this role. So like we'll partner with somebody and we'll build something cool together, and then we'll go and document it and write it up. In addition to just our documentation and those kinds of things. So we actually have 2 open heads for that, one a senior and one a junior. So very happy to take referrals.
Thank you, Dan. Good to know that. Thank you, guys. If anyone else has any opportunity like that, please feel free to drop a few lines on the chat window. Now, next question. Who is looking for a job? Please let us know if you are looking for a job. Let us know what's your name and your skills and what kind of work are you looking for. So as I mentioned, you can speak up or drop a few lines. Nice. Okay, guys. So the third point of the agenda is cool events that the community should be aware of. What's coming up next that we would like to attend virtually in this case? Anyone else, anyone who has an idea of this, or any events that we should be aware of?
Yeah, I'll speak up if that's okay. CodeFresh is going to be doing some cool events centered around KubeCon Virtual Europe. So I know this is the Europe one, but it's virtual. So they've kind of adjusted the times to make it more friendly for all time zones. And we're going to be doing some panels at the end of every day, which will end up being at about 11 a.m. Pacific time, so 1 p.m. Central time. And we're going to have some experts come chat about what they learned at KubeCon that day and what news was going on. So check out our site, codefresh.io/events. And I'm going to get those kind of meetups panels posted very shortly. And we'll be doing one at the end of every day after KubeCon. So you can catch up what was happening while you were sleeping. Very early. It starts very early morning, but then goes until about, until mid morning. So yeah, check those out.
Nice. Thank you, Taryn. Steve, you'll be speaking at, yes, I was about to talk about DevOps World. Would you like, go ahead, please, Steve. Just let us know a little bit about DevOps World.
Yeah, so it's a Cloud-Beast conference. I'm actually speaking about value stream mapping. So I'm going to be talking about end-to-end flow, how to measure your whole development process and tackle bottlenecks.
It's so silly.
Nice.
Yeah, I watched the Apollo Crunch.
Let's mute the rest of us. Thank you. So thank you, Steve. Actually, I may go look for you after that. I need some guidance on value stream mapping. So thank you for bringing that up. Great. And now let's, before I forget, Kathy mentioned that she's an IT operations, have a passion for DevOps and Agile. Yes, that's the reason you're here, Kathy. I love it. So we can connect with her or anyone who wants to connect with her on her LinkedIn in the chat notes. Same thing with Dipti. And let's see, we're hiring Mary. Mary, would you like to speak up? If not, I can also read.
Did you say Mary or Marie?
Marie, sorry. Thank you, Marie.
Oh, that's problem. So I'm in Austin, Texas. I am a senior project manager working on IT projects for the Texas Department of Information Resources. And I just put in the chat window that we are hiring right now. We have some open positions, one for a senior network engineer. Some other ones are in IT, procurement, contract management, if anyone has experience with that. We have a security analyst position open. And we also have a data officer position open, which is brand new to the agency. But in a nutshell, what we do is we're the IT agency for the state of Texas. That's not a help desk. It's setting IT policy, governance. We have the state CISO, we have the state CIO, we have the state chief data officer. We have shared technology services through our data center, and we provide all telecommunications for the state, and we provide procurement opportunities through discounted contracts that we negotiate with vendors.
Great, thank you for the information, Marie. Now you guys know, if you're interested, just reach out to Marie and let's keep that rolling. Let's see what opportunities that brings us. So perfect. Now let's move on to the, before we move on to the talk, there's gonna be a raffle. Thank you to the guys from CodeFresh, guys. So let me drop Taryn, could you please drop the link? Thank you, the raffle link. Thank you, great. Thank you, Taryn. So now our speaker today, guys, has a very interesting trajectory. He has spent more than a decade helping companies grow in terms of tech and also marketing. In this sense, he has also been part of companies like Complete Solar and Atlassian in the past. His path is a combination of both marketing and development or tech, which transforms him into the Chief Technology Evangelist and VP of Marketing of CodeFresh nowadays. From where Dan comes today to talk about something very important, probably the most important part in DevOps, and that is the culture. and specifically how to create a business case for companies that want to embrace it. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Dan Garfield, please.
Thank you very much for that wonderful introduction. So yeah, as JJ mentioned, I'm going to be talking about how to make the business case for DevOps. So let me share my screen here. And feel free to jump in and ask questions or throw stuff in the chat. I'll be watching the chat. So feel free to throw questions in there as we go through this. To introduce myself just a little bit more, I am the Chief Technology Evangelist for CodeFresh. I'm also a Google developer expert and a member of the Forbes Technology Council, where I most of the work I do is focused around Kubernetes, cloud native stuff, and CI/CD, DevOps, those kinds of things. And so that's mostly the companies that I work with. I do sometimes run workshops in our customer companies. So I've done a lot of workshops around Istio or around Kubernetes or those kinds of things. And we'll do like these all-day trainings and teach people how to, most recently we were doing one where we basically go through like, let's create a cluster, let's create a pipeline, let's deploy our application, let's create the build and deploy loop. And we just go through that step by step with people and train them how to do it. And then I also do some like free workshops. We were hosting them in person before the pandemic hit. And so we had a graduating class. I don't know how many it was, Taryn, of like 40 people or so that went through a 6-week course where I taught them how to get a Kubernetes cluster up and running, introduce them to DevOps, deploying applications, and all that kind of good stuff. So anyway, that's my background. Now, just to introduce CodeFresh and why I kind of focus on this, we built a DevOps automation platform that includes CI/CD and some other components. And basically, we handle everything from the moment that you commit your code, and we'll integrate with any code provider, to the moment when you deploy it, and we integrate with any cloud, any deployment environment out there. So we have a big focus on Kubernetes, but we definitely have users who are deploying to VMs. We have people who are building Android applications, those kinds of things. But this loop is sort of the critical engineering loop. And so that's why we spend a lot of time on this. And so to get into the topic, it's actually topical. I know everybody's sick of talking about COVID. I sometimes walk outside and I think like, oh my gosh, this is still happening. Like it's eternal. So it's the eternal conversation that everybody's always having. But depending on what industry you're in, the big focus, when like back in January, was probably like, how can we move faster as an engineering team? How can we be more effective? And we're hearing a lot more from people who are getting, how do we reduce costs? And this is going to depend on your industry. I mean, we've got some of our customers like Epic Games, they make Fortnite, it's the most popular game in the world. They're doing fantastic. Turns out lots of people are playing Fortnite right now. So they're like, oh, let's just keep going faster. How do we keep going faster? Other customers, like Gap, they're a retailer. They're looking at how do we cut costs. So these conversations are very closely related. And so depending on which boat you're in, you're going to take a slightly different tack with how you're going to talk about the business case for DevOps. And the first kind of tip that I have is, you got to remember that you as an engineering team, as a DevOps team, you typically don't speak the same language as the business. And the business wants to hear about dollars and cents, and they want to hear what the bottom line is. And as engineers, lots of times we want to talk about the cool thing we're building. Oh, this is great. This is going to reduce regressions. And if you say regressions to an accountant, their eyes will glaze over in the same way that if that accountant talked to you about accounting would. It just doesn't mean anything to them. Like, oh, we're going to reduce regressions. And they're like, that's cool. I don't care about that. I want money. Like, so you have to speak their language. So the first thing, the first area that I would focus is avoiding downtime, because this is something that is pretty easy to make people understand. And if we look at a couple of big examples, Costco, this last Black Friday, and not to pick on any of these companies. I mean, we've all had outages, but Costco had an outage during Black Friday, and it cost them $11 million. And we're talking about the busiest time. And typically outages are most likely to occur during your most critical business revenue making times, right? Southwest Airlines had an outage that lasted about a day and that cost them $82 million. Amazon, it cost them about $200,000 per minute for downtime. So they had an outage last November and it cost them $2.6 million for 13 minutes. So that means that we can actually put a scale and a cost to downtime. And when we talk about what we're trying to accomplish, this is something that instead of talking about regressions, you're talking about the cost of a regression. You're talking about the cost of downtime. That's something that's going to make a lot of sense. Now, being engineers, lots of times we can get tied up in like, well, wait a second, like the website being up, you know, that's only one part of how we make money. We've also got a sales team, we've got a marketing team, like they've got to have a contribution too. In fact, it's a lot more like a stool. If any one of those things doesn't work, you just don't make money. So if the website is down, people can't buy, right? And so you're just going to lose money. So it doesn't matter what sales and marketing might be doing. If engineering is down and failing, you can basically count it as just lost. So the easiest way to do this is you just take the annual revenue of the company and you divide it by the minutes in the year, and that gives you the amount of money per minute, roughly average. Now, is that going to be slightly different if the outage happens at 2 a.m. versus 2 p.m.? Of course. Is it going to be different if it's during peak, you know, like a Black Friday, you know, sales event versus a normal, you know, Sunday afternoon? Of course. But you don't get to pick your downtime. So you can only put a totally accurate cost to downtime after it's occurred. So instead of trying to estimate and say, oh, well, we're going to have an outage during this peak hours, and therefore it's going to cost us this much, just take the revenue in general and just average it out. And just say, okay, I'm Amazon. We make $107 billion a year. That means it costs us $200,000 per minute that we're out. And then when we put that into context and scale, and this is something you can communicate to your business team, because all of them, everybody's heard of 5 nines. Oh, we do 5 nines of uptime. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand, but just in your mind, how many of you actually achieved 5 nines of uptime across all of your services last year? Maybe one of you did it. And if you want to take a bow and have us just cheer you for 5 minutes, I would be more than happy to do so, because it is really hard. People don't understand that 5 nines of uptime means that you get 5 minutes of downtime a year. So if you're Amazon, that means that if you're doing 5 nines of uptime, you only lose $1 million a year to outages, right? That's hard. That's rough, right? So when it's important when you're communicating this to contextualize, getting to 5 nines of uptime is like running the 24-hour at Le Mans. Like, this is a hard, serious, process-oriented engineering task, and we have to plan for it. It's not just going to happen magically. So you definitely want to put that in context and say, look, if we can't achieve 5 nines of uptime, this is what we're talking about in terms of losing time and losing revenue. And I know, you know, I like to do like, okay, we're in January and we have 5 minutes of budget of downtime. And how far through the year can we go before we're over budget on downtime? And that's also a language that business is going to understand. Oh, we're over budget on downtime. We actually need to invest more to prevent downtime. And in order to achieve this, you know, this lower downtime, obviously, it's you have to have everything working together really well. I highly recommend GitOps. That's not the topic of this talk, but a great deal of outages are traced to fat finger configuration changes. And anytime I hear about one, it drives me crazy. I saw a tool on Reddit the other day where they were like, hey, here's this cool command line tool that will show you when you're connected to prod with kube control versus when you're connected to staging. And all I could think was, what the hell are you doing? Why are you connecting to prod when you're kube control? Like, that is so dangerous. Like that, that you would just have that as a default apparent like possible option is terrifying. You shouldn't do that. Everything should be applied through automation. And there are a million reasons for why you should do it always through automation. But you shouldn't be making any changes to production. You know, I know this is the Texas meetup, but cowboy style. Should we save that for something else? So the big balancing act that we have to do with DevOps is there's a side of the business that really wants code delivery. We're trying to deliver new features. We're trying to get new cool stuff out. We're trying to fix bugs. And on the flip side, you've got uptime. And this is like the site reliability engineers are thinking like, gotta have uptime. And oftentimes these are viewed as in conflict. And that conflict derives from not having good process. If you have excellent process, you actually will reduce your downtime by delivering code faster and more often. So it sounds paradoxical, but think about it this way. If you're doing daily releases or hourly or whatever, you're talking about small, low risk changes. Each change has a very small surface area and a small risk. When you're doing a quarterly release, you're jam-packing thousands of changes at once, so that the risk surface on that is very, very high. And if you're only doing it once a quarter, you're probably not that good at it. And I think there's the old adage that if you want to get good at something, do it more often. If you want to get good at releasing, do it more often. Most of you probably are in the range of releasing at least once a week, if not daily. But we just did a survey on this, and it's still, I think it's still upwards of 60% of teams don't even release weekly or biweekly. So it's still a big challenge for people. But this is something else that in your strategy you're going to want to communicate. We can actually reduce risk by releasing more often. So we need to invest in automation so that we can do this stuff. Now the other side of this coin is delivering faster, and I saw this great quote from someone I greatly admire, and he said, undelivered code has the same value as unwritten code. This is a truism that you can take, that no matter what code you've written, it doesn't matter. And I hear all the time, you know, engineers say, oh, I'm basically done with that, don't worry about it. And then it takes like 6 more days to get delivered. And it's like, how long did that take? And they're like, well, it only took me 2 hours. It's like, no, it took you 6 days. That's how long it took, right? If you can't ship the code, it can't deliver any value. So it doesn't matter how quickly you're able to achieve it if it's not deployed, right? So this is actually, we don't usually think this way as engineers, but every change that you're making has a business value associated with it. And so think about every commit, and you can maybe don't think about this way for your sanity, but communicate it this way to the business. Every commit has a $ attached to it. And I know personally of teams that were making a change that was worth $10 million a year to the company. And so if you think about it, how long it takes you to deliver that feature means it's essentially costing you money to have it not deployed, right? Because you could be getting that revenue today and getting it faster, right? So we did this case study with Steelcase, great company, and we were able to get their code delivery cycle from 3 days to 3 hours. So their average was 3 days, and we took it down to 3 hours. So how do we calculate this? And most of this presentation is focused around how do we like put calculators to these things. And you might be scared to get it wrong, but we're talking about ballpark stuff here. And when you get in the ballpark, that's good enough most of the time when you're talking to the business. So in the case of Steelcase, their revenue last year was about 3.4 billion. And we made a rough estimation of how much business value was delivered by their engineering team alone. We came up with about $300 million. And I have a way to, a guideline for how to estimate that. So that means that if we reduce code delivery by 3 days, that means that the company will make an extra $2.5 million this year. So think about it almost like inventory sitting on a shelf. One of Apple's greatest innovation, if you ask people like, what does Apple do better than anybody? And you'll say like, oh, they have the aluminum, unibody design, or the App Store is the best thing that they did, or the iPod or the iPhone. And those are all great answers. I think their supply chain is one of the greatest innovations that they have. When you buy an Apple product, within about 30 seconds, their entire global supply chain has been updated. So they never carry inventory. If their factory is shut down, Apple will be completely out of inventory within like 2 or 3 days. And the fact that they don't carry any inventory means that they don't have money sitting on shelves. It's always out the door. So that frees up a ton of money so that they can invest it in making new aluminum, whatever. So that's like the same thing with DevOps. You have inventory that you're not shipping. And if it's sitting on the shelf, if it's not deployed, then it's costing you money to sit there. So that's the way you want to think about it. So you take the business value that the engineering team delivers in a year, you multiply that by the days saved and divide it by the days of the year, and that's how you get the additional revenue. Now, if you don't know the value that your engineering team delivers, one of the things you can do is a rough estimate, and this varies widely by industry, but a very rough estimate is if you take all your engineering salaries, multiply that by 8, and that is a good rough estimate of how much business value your engineering team should deliver. Now, like I said, that does vary widely within industries. Some companies are as much as 20 times the value, and some companies are low as like 2x the value. And if you're a startup, it's more like negative value, the more engineers you have. So, but that's a different conversation about burn rates. Anyway, so we'll have a calculator for this that I see Taryn is putting into the chat, the links to the blog post as well. So this loop of code to deployment, that's the critical loop that we want to focus on because it helps us avoid downtime. It helps us deliver features faster, right? So that's where we're looking. The metric that you're looking at is from first commit to deployment is called lead time to change. So this is the metric that you want to be tracking all the time. And when you communicate to the business about like, oh, I want to invest in this tool or this process or whatever, you can say, I want to take our lead time to change, and I want to reduce it by, 3 days or 50% or whatever. And that's going to be incredibly valuable for you, right? The third thing that I want to talk about is saving engineering time. And saving engineering time is pretty critical too. This is the most satisfying as an engineer because you just waste less of your time and you're not wasted with like slow builds and things like that. So what if you could cut build times by just 5 minutes? Now, if you're in a company with 1,000 engineers and they're making an average of $1.25 a minute, which is the average, just about the average engineering salary, and they're doing 5 builds a day and you're saving 5 minutes per build, that means you just saved $8 million a year in engineers just staring at screens, waiting for things to happen. And I actually saw a very funny anecdote. I was visiting a company, visiting a friend for lunch, and we were standing by their desk, and next to them, there was a desk with 2 full computers. And I was like, whoa, what's this engineer like? They must be super productive. They've got like two keyboards at once. This is rad, right? And my friend said, oh, actually what happens is every time they go to build something, it locks everything down for an hour. So they can be productive. They then move over to this computer because that computer's gone. And I thought, like, we have cloud build infrastructure for a reason. Like, so we don't have to like lock up your computer. Maybe it's cheaper to buy everybody a second computer. I doubt it. And it's just not, it's a bad security practice too. So there's lots of reasons not to do that. Okay. So we did a case study with company Hover. They actually gave a talk at KubeCon, and this is very self-aggrandizing, but their build times when they moved from code, they used Jenkins and then Circle CI and they moved to CodeFresh. Their build times went from 2.5 hours to 12 minutes. Now that's not a 1,000 engineer company. This is more like I think like probably like 30 engineer company or something like that. But that does translate into an extreme amount of savings for that business. So here's the calculation. You just take the cost of engineering per minute times the builds per day times 251 working days a year. So not times 365 because people have vacation and there's weekends and stuff like that. Times minutes saved times number of engineers. That'll give you what you're looking for. You can also, and I didn't do this, but when you're estimating your employee costs, one of the things that most people outside of like HR, the business do, is they don't account for employee overhead, which is typically around 30%. So if you take any salary and you add about 30% on top of it, that's how much it costs to employ somebody, because there's benefits and getting them a desk and a computer and health insurance, all that stuff. So I recommend including that if you can. Okay, so the next thing is reducing infrastructure overhead, and this is going to get into the cloud native aspects here really heavily. So the industry standard is about 30% of infrastructure budgets are spent on idle machines. And so if you're using something like Kubernetes, you can deploy containers. You can actually achieve much tighter packing of processes on machines, so you just don't pay for idle time. You can have auto scaling on, so you can auto scale it up when you need it down. That's very easy when you're using Kubernetes versus if you're just like deploying an army of EC2 instances. That's like you're taking on a lot of overhead yourself to manage that. It's a lot more difficult. And another thing, spot instances. If you haven't heard of Amazon's spot instances, Google Cloud calls them preemptible nodes. Azure has another word for them. Basically, these are instances that could be destroyed and taken away from you at any time. And they often cost about 90% less than regular resources. So depending on the workload, so for example, we have this CodeFresh runner. So if you want to run your pipelines on your own infrastructure, you can take that runner and you can deploy it on your own Kubernetes cluster. If those nodes are spot instances or preemptible nodes, you're going to pay a tenth for the infrastructure cost that you would otherwise. And for things like pipelines, workloads like that, you know, if a node gets deleted out from under, like you can just automatically restart the pipeline. So like you might miss like, you know, a minute or two or something, but you've reduced, so you might introduce like a minute or two of overhead cost for the developer every once in a while reducing your infrastructure cost by 90%. So it's definitely worth looking into. A great company, great tool, SpotInst. No relation to me or CodeFresh. Beyond just admiration, they have a really cool product that helps you move traditional infrastructure onto spot instances and keeping the reliability. It's pretty rad. Okay, another big point in this whole discussion of building the business case is whether you should build something or buy something. And there are cases when you should do one and cases when you should do the other. We did a case study with a customer where they were using Jenkins plus some hand-rolled deployment tools, and they needed to put 2 full-time engineers to maintain this build infrastructure tooling. So when it came to the cost, they spent about $70,000 to build the tool, and then they were spending about $215,000 just to maintain the tool on top of using the tool, which isn't represented here. Whereas here they were able to get a CodeFresh license for like $47,000 to do everything they wanted to do. So they could save about $250,000 a year. There's a great calculator for this that I've linked here, baremetrics.com/build versus buy. And you can put in for any project, like, and be realistic, like how much time is this going to take me? And people most often underestimate the maintenance time. So you want to be like, have a very real moment with yourself of making a good, strong estimate of what you think that's going to be. Yeah, and I see Sherry just posted that in the chat. Thank you, Sherry. So big summary, Don't be afraid to put costs to paper. As engineers, lots of times we want to be very precise and we're worried that the number might be wrong. We're like, well, do we really do this? Do we really do that? I mean, maybe it should be this, maybe it should be different. I want to give something that's going to, we want to be precise, right? And we don't want to leave anything to chance. But you really need to just start putting costs to paper and putting estimates in there, and just accept there's a great adage from the business side that is, all models are wrong, but some are useful. You don't have to be 100% correct, but you do need to make something that's useful, right? It's a good guideline for where your costs are going to be. DevOps, especially going forward, we're living in a post-crisis world where we expect outages and demand swinging around. I mean, nobody could have, if you're the Netflix team, your infrastructure expanse has been super elastic over the last year, right? You've seen huge explosions of usage as people all go rush to watch Tiger King. And then you've seen total dead drops as everybody runs out of the house to get to go demonstrate and stuff like that. So your DevOps is probably one of the most valuable investments you can make, because your biggest cost center is probably your engineers. Your engineers are very expensive. Their time is very expensive. So if you're willing to invest in engineering time to accomplish things, you have to be willing to invest in DevOps to make those engineers that much more effective, which is what a lot of those calculators are about, right? Speak the language of the business. Use dollars and cents. Put pen to paper, put dollars on there, and then you can say, hey, I want to buy this tool. I think it's going to save us, it's going to cost us $50,000 and it's going to save us $2 million a year. And when you present stuff like that, and I've given you a bunch of calculators to come up with those things, what's the CFO going to say? No, I really want to save that 50,000 so we can keep on spending 2 million. Never. They don't do it. They never do that. And the only thing that they could possibly do is poke holes in your numbers. And even with these calculators, oftentimes, even if you're off by like 40 or 50%, it still makes sense to make the investment that you want to make. I'll use all the equations we've shared. There's a link to the calculators here that I see Terrence put in the chat. And please, as you use this, send me feedback. This is open source. Come make a pull request. And I don't mean, it's actually not in a GitHub repo, but but send me an email at least, or hit me up on Twitter and say, hey, this worked, this didn't work. People poked holes in this number. People really liked this number, whatever it is. We want to keep on making these calculators strong. That uses them is going to be really effective. And I see Taryn just posted my Twitter, which is @todaywasawesome. We also have a lot of upcoming events. Check out codefresh.io/events. This talk is actually published in there, and then we keep an archive of all the events and with recordings linked to and project files and all those kinds of things. Other resources I'd recommend, we did a really cool talk on CI/CD pipelines for microservices, which I think was awesome. The multi-cloud canary with failover is a lot of fun. Using multi-stage, this is like the YouTube headline, using multi-stage Docker, Go, Java, and Bazel to destroy long build times. That's the clickbait one. But also a lot of fun. We do a lot of work to optimize build times, and basically any minute you spend saving on builds is like super well worth it. So definitely check those out. And with that, open to questions and discussion. Oh, and don't forget to try to win this Nintendo Switch that Taryn has posted in the chat. Definitely get in on that. Oh, sorry. All right.
No worries.
Here you go.
Dan, thank you so much. I bet that you are told this phrase many times, but today was awesome. Today was awesome. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
I think it's something that many people required in this call, including myself. I have my own questions, but I will start first asking the audience, please speak up, drop your questions on the chat window, or just open up the mic. Let's see. Questions for Dan, guys?
while people are thinking of questions, I have to tell you, I was really thinking about Austin the other day because I made myself breakfast tacos. And I haven't been able to get to it too cheese, so I had to get that done. And it was delicious.
Yes, yeah, original Austin breakfast tacos here in Austin for sure. Let me know when you are in town, by the way, Dan. Even if there's this thing going, still we can get social distance breakfast tacos.
Oh my gosh, I would love it. Yeah, I'll let you know. I would love to be back in Texas. Yeah, it looks like there was a question. Can you explain preemptible nodes? Yeah, so this is really cool. So if you think about what a cloud provider is doing, they have to have they have huge power consumption costs, right? So they're spinning up servers because they have capacity they need to fill. And at any given moment, they have to have excess capacity available in case things jump really quickly, right? Because it takes a little while to turn on machines. And even though that's all automated. So what Amazon, what Google, what every cloud provider has done is they've taken that overhead of servers that are running and they said, these servers, we can't guarantee that they're going to stay running for a long period of time. And most of them have a time limit. So like Google will automatically kill the server after 24 hours of use. But if you use this unpredictable and unstable set of infrastructure, we'll only charge you like 10% of the cost that you would normally pay for that infrastructure. So if do you want to put your critical your shopping cart on those servers? Maybe. No, depending on how you set up your ingress and if you've got the right infrastructure, it could work and it could be fine. But the very easiest place is like your build infrastructure. So like you can, and when I was at Atlassian, I think we were spending about $250,000 a month just on our build infrastructure on AWS. So if I could take that and put it on spot instances, I could get that bill down to like 25 grand a month, right? So there's definitely a huge opportunity there. And so ways to do this, SpotInst is a great stop. I mentioned CodeFresh. We have the CodeFresh runner, which you can throw on preemptible nodes, and it works really, really well. And it will do auto scaling. So if you have spin up a Kubernetes cluster on Amazon, it would be like an EKS cluster or whatever, or on Google Cloud, another great option. And you can throw the runner on there, and it will automatically scale up preemptible nodes as they're needed. And as the cloud provider nukes them, it'll just spin up new ones. It works pretty well. So good question. Yeah, selling the holes of the donuts. That's basically, yeah, that's basically right. For moving serious workloads, I do think SpotInst is a really cool company that specializes in more reliable workloads. Yeah, good question.
Other questions, guys? In the meantime, while they're also thinking, I have one that is mixed between comment and question for Dan for you. So I'm an advocate of avoiding people from doing the repetitive task, right? That is because I do believe that our human creativity flourishes when we are doing something different, doing something over and over for a little bit of time until we master it. Perfect, that's good. But then we have to move on. So you guys basically are helping, or you guys advocate to automate as much as we can the repetitive tasks. Now, something that I've been experiencing for like 3-4 months with a specific team from the ones that I coach is the cultural part of this. Mm-hmm. They are very entrenched into old, I wouldn't call it even old, but vintage thinking, right? That no, we cannot do this yet because our product is too big, it's a desktop application, something, any excuse. So how do you guys tackle those kind of cultural impediments?
Yeah, good question. And actually, it is a big issue. We're getting ready to release a survey, so sneak peek. I think it'll be out the week of KubeCon Europe. In our survey of not CodeFresh users, but just general engineers and engineering teams, less than 5% of companies have automated everything from the moment from the commit to the deploy, which is shocking. So like 95% have some automated, have some manual tasks that they have to perform as part of that flow. And you definitely want to get rid of that as much as possible. And so I think one, you've got the carrot, right? Which is like, hey, look how much time we can save, and look how much money that's going to save us in the interim. And then you've got the stick, which is look at all the downtime that happens because people are trying to do these things manually. That's really scary and really dangerous. And it even is worse than that. Like, I'm shocked at how many people run builds on their engineering machine that they will then upload artifacts to be deployed. I don't know if you've ever seen this, but I've seen it it's always shocks me how often people do it. I saw a company where one of the engineers had opened up a bad email link, and their machine was infected, and then stuff was injected into their code that then they accidentally uploaded Trojans. I don't know if it's called if it would be a Trojan, but they put it up on over 5,000 customer websites because they didn't have an automated deployment mechanism to do this. And it's a matter of time thing. It's not like it's a risk thing. And I've known so many companies in the last 6 months that have had that Bitcoin, encryption hack where they encrypt all your stuff. And it's just super dangerous if you're not operating under version control. I know of another instance where a large financial company, I won't say which one, it was about 10 years ago, they laid off a whole team of people right before Christmas, and the service went down. And when people came in to investigate, they found that there had been nothing checked into code for over 8 months. So they were just flying high with whatever the heck they had deployed. And somebody, a poor engineer, I don't know why it's not necessarily relevant, but it was over Christmas. And so the engineer that had to fix it was Jewish because they weren't on vacation, and they had to go through tens of thousands of lines of code and pull things off production. So like stuff like that, I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy how many people do it. And you almost don't want to mention it because you think everybody will be like, oh, well, we don't do that. Like you'll think everybody doesn't do that. But when I actually talk to people individually, it's shocking how often people are in these bad practices. And so if you can't get them with the carrot of like, hey, think about how amazing our engineering experience could be if we could automate these things, then get them with the stick and tell them, think about the consequences. If we don't fix these things, if we don't fix these processes, we're leaving ourselves open to incredibly high risk. And if the carrot doesn't get them, usually the stick will.
Thank you, Dan. I really appreciate it. There's a long question by Dipti. Do you want to speak up? Maybe that's quicker.
Yeah, sure. So I was trying to figure out what's kind of the best approach to determine when you're trying to obviously make a compelling argument to the business and say, okay, this is how much everything is going to cost. One of the examples Dan had given was taking an engineer's salary and multiplying it by 5 or by 8 to try and determine, how much
business value
costs. So I've had multi-state teams before, so I can't really go and just take an average. So I was trying to figure out what's kind of a best approach. What have you used in the past that you think is pretty effective?
Well, so when you talk about the variance between teams, you probably don't, you might have teams that are 2x more expensive than another team, but you're not talking about 20x or 50x. And so if you took a low and a high and you said, oh, it's going to save us 10 to 20 million. Well, does that scale of granularity even matter with what you're comparing to? So if you're saying like, oh, we want to invest $100,000 and it's going to save us 10 to 20 million. Do we care if it's 10 or 20 million? Not really. You know, so just stick an average on it. Say it's going to save us about 15 million or say 10 to 20 million, because nobody cares, because you're talking about spending $100,000, right? So like the actual expense, the granularity only matters insofar as the scale dictates it. So if you think you're going to save $300,000 and you need to spend $200,000, well, then you might actually, you might reevaluate if it's even worth it, because you probably have lower hanging fruit elsewhere. But you could also even just ask your HR team, you know, if you need to, and you could estimate it separately. So you could say, oh, this is going to save this team size, and they make an average roughly of this, therefore it's going to save us this much money, you know? And then as far as like sharing that information, you only want to be careful about sharing the backing of those equations. If it's like, this is a 5-person team and they make this much money, therefore it's going to save us X, you don't necessarily want to say to them or to the other people in the engineering org how much they make. But when you're talking to the business side, you know, it might be okay. And you can basically take a couple of these things, a couple of these stats, and bundle them together so that people aren't thinking about, you know, the wrong thing. I don't know if that's helpful, hopefully. Oh yeah, Bill brought up you need a DevSecOps function inside DevOps. Yeah, for sure. I mean, DevSecOps pretty critical part of the equation. If you're not scanning every change, you know, every change that you're doing, if you're not making sure that artifacts are always coming from your automated infrastructure, that's you're opening yourself up to risk. And a good DevSecOps function is going to be really useful there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Bailey brought up that also the tools are implemented. Very, very commonly, people are like, oh, we're good, we bought this tool, not implemented. I know of teams that have spent like $300,000 on a tool and then never implemented it. Not CodeFresh, that's not a CodeFresh thing, but other tools, and it's like, you're just paying them $300,000 a year to call you once a month and say, hey, have you implemented this yet? And people will be like, oh, well, we bought the tool, so it's problem solved. No, it's got to be implemented. That's a great point, Bill.
Let's go with one more question, and then we're going to proceed with the raffle. To breakfast. Let's see Bill's comment, and if there are no more questions, guys, I think Dan, if you're good, do you have anything else before we move on to the raffle?
No, just a big thank you. Really appreciate it, and feel free to hit me up on Twitter @todayWasAwesome. Though I am trying to spend less time there these days for my mental health, but hit me up there anyway, and I'll chat with you. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Dan. I really, really appreciate it that you have had that we have had the chance to learn from your expertise and all the things that you have researched, and now we are iterating our process all together. Thank you so much again, Dan. Taryn, if you're ready, we can proceed with the raffle.
I am. I did my random number generator. Thank you everyone for entering the raffle. Thanks to Dan, and of course thanks to JJ for having us. And our big winner is, drum roll please, of the Nintendo Switch is Kari Davis. Congrats. Oh, she looks surprised. I'm so glad you're on camera so I can see your reaction. Oh, you look like you have somebody who might be able to use it there. Congratulations. I will email you after this and get your address and send you your Nintendo Switch. You are, sounds like you're going to be mom of the day. Mom of the week.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone. Oh, sorry. My dog.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Taryn, again. And one more time, thank you so much to the people from CodeFresh, Dan Garfield, Taryn Jones, that are joining us and providing their expertise today. I just dropped a survey link, guys. It's a 3-minute survey that helps us to keep improving the content that we are bringing you in this format, now the webinar format. And this is not only about presentations, we also have ideas of doing this a more dynamic, more interactive. event, or even combining presentations and also more interactive dynamics that we may have. So I really appreciate that you have connected today from wherever you are in the planet. It's a pleasure, as always, to be the host of this event, to learn from you and to keep sharing Kaizen or continuous improvement. So thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate it. See you next time. Bye, guys.